During these intense times of change, it's so easy to focus on the drama of it all and the hard and challenging aspects. And let's be real, all of us have been really put through the ringer of these hard and challenging things, especially since the beginning of the year. But what we have to remember is that the universe isn't just doing that for the sake of doing that. It's doing that to prepare us for a new way of living. It is forcing us to kick out ways of being that are not bad, but just soon to be outdated. It's training us to live and approach life in a different way. So now that our foundations have been completely removed or shaken, that's obviously a time of intense death and rebirth. We have to give ourselves time to grieve the attachments that are being taken from our lives or that we ourselves are letting go of. But at the same time, we have to remember that this is also an incredibly positive thing. And this month specifically, and these next coming months, we have to keep that in mind because, as we know, it's our mentality and our consciousness that directs this type of energy, directs this kind of very intense, airy, light, untethered, free energy towards creating outcomes that we do want. And so this is actually a very positive time, and I think we have to keep reminding ourselves of that truth all the time right now, because once you have removed foundations, once you have been forced to let go of things that maybe you never thought you would let go of, it changes the landscape. And it means that it's easier and quicker for life to change on a dime. It's easier and quicker for quantum leaps to happen. It's easier for something to just appear out of thin air. And when we are open to that, that's when the universe can actually give it to us. It's much harder if you live a very narrow consciousness for all of that side of life to come to you. So the first thing I want us to remember this month and in the next coming months is that possibilities come out of thin air. They always have. They've never come out of anywhere else other than thin air. And we cannot engineer how good things can happen to us based on how good things have kind of slowly come together in the past, because we're entering into a time where they can happen so quickly and in such ways that we could never sort of fathom, like very unconnected ways, very, oh my God, I never could have seen that coming. And the reason why it's happening now in particular is because on the 20th of April, there is a massive cosmic blessing happening in the sky where these two great benefic planets, Jupiter and Uranus, are coming together. And this only happens once every 12 years, but happens in different signs, obviously, every time they meet. This time they're happening in Taurus, and Taurus is all to do with the material world. So money, resources, the physical world, beauty, supply, like food supply, money supply, all the things that occupy our sort of like daily frame. And Jupiter is the planet that brings abundance and blessings and makes everything bigger where it touches. It just shines more light there. And Uranus is surprise, it's innovation, it's inventiveness. So we are getting a shakeup in our physical reality, but it can be a good one if we choose to make it so. And these conjunctions, obviously, they happen on one specific day, but because these planets move so slowly, they are in that energy for much longer than just the day that they touch. And also they create this like seed level of consciousness that then lasts, because we have to learn how to integrate that blessing that has come down to us on that day, that energetic doorway or opportunity, and do something with it. And so this really is a time for us to, keep ourselves as free as possible. And freedom is interesting because obviously we talk about, the breakup or the big job change or the moving house. But this time it's so much more internal, right? What do we want to be free of in terms of habits, thought paths that we've thought about the same thing the same way for the last, 2 years every single day, stuff like that. So we'll get into that. But also It's really to do with the fact that physical matter is getting a shakeup. Uranus is there innovating the way that we see, like, oh, all of a sudden, for example, when you have to mine something, you have to go into the ground and then it takes a certain amount of hours. All of a sudden, that might take 2 minutes. All of a sudden, the way that we mine might look completely differently because of some great technological innovation. All of a sudden, the way that the shipping industry or the banking industry might just completely be reinvented. And you know, that very famous saying of problems cannot be solved at the level of which they were created. That's what's going to happen now. It's like we're not going to innovate at the level of which we know something already operates. We're going to scrap out the rule book. And if we were to write something out on paper, how would we want it to work? How would we imagine it to work? And so it's wonderful that we're able to look out at the outside world and reinvent the rules. But the more important thing is we need to look inside and reinvent our own rules, our own internal architecture of our own thoughts. So for example, I've spoken about this example with me before, and it's such a silly example, but in my own brain, brushing my teeth in the morning is closely tied to and leads me automatically to feeling dread for the day because of when I used to have to get up early as a child and get ready for school. So that wiring is already grooved there. So there's no amount of me trying to brush my teeth more that's going to make that go away. I have to rise above that internal architecture and those ties and reinvent or rewire how I want them to lead to one another or lead to something different, completely different. So when we talk about, there's a lot of talk about neural pathways these days. And what I want people to know is that like A and B are only leading to one another because there is a pathway there. But what about if you can go via stop at M, go from A to M, and then end up at Y or wind up back at B, but the experience has been better. So it's about sort of like rising above and not trying to think more, but think different. And that's really the subtle thing of where it becomes noticing how you move through your day and saying, what am I thinking right now? Why am I interpreting this as bad? What associations am I making? What meaning am I ascribing to this thing that is causing me stress? Because if everything is neutral, anything that makes you feel positive or negative is because your brain has done some kind of neurological association in its inner pathways. So this is really the time where we know that consciousness is the answer to every single problem. How do we innovate? How do we change? How do we alter our lives? And so if you can change your consciousness inside, that actually is what's going to change the outside world, almost by accident, because you've taught yourself to think in a more genius way. And then when you are a person who moves through the world as more of a genius thinker, able to think outside of the box, like that Jupiter expanding the Uranian way of thinking, then you are just going to look at the raw data coming at you from the physical life, the Taurian life, in ways that you wouldn't necessarily have made yourself think, but have just naturally occurred to you because you have cultivated a brain that approaches life in a different way.
And how do we do that? Would there be action steps for how to cultivate using our brain in a different way?
So I think the best place to start, usually because it's the most accented in your mind, is whatever is causing you reaction. Whatever you notice yourself having a strong and quick, almost automatic reactivity to, where you notice your ego kick in and try to justify why you feel annoyed, angry, judgy, pissed off, whatever, those are sent to you because the charge is saying, oh, look here. This is a place where you get to practice rewiring your brain. When things are kind of normal, they're harder to notice.
So for example, let's use me as an example. One of the things that I'm letting go of is always solving people's problems for them and feeling like that's the only thing I have to offer people. So what would you say to me if I feel like that's the thing that keeps causing charge for me? Like, oh my gosh, I'm watching all these people around me going through it and feeling really helpless of like, I wish I could just fix it for them.
Well, I think this is also where human design becomes so powerful because it gives you the practical information of the way out. So, you come back to the fact that you're a 5 line in human design, your profile is a 3-5, and the 5 in the profile is always the one that wants to save the day. But the practical advice for a 5 is like, know which days are yours to save and then only say yes to those, or rush to save those according to your authority and strategy. But also, I think us as humans, we will do anything to just alleviate temporary worry or discomfort. So half of the battle is saying, this situation is causing me discomfort, right? So we're not kidding ourselves that we're doing things for other people. It's like we're trying to alleviate our own discomfort. And can I then just practice perhaps sitting in feeling discomfort of, if I can't save everyone's day, what is the meaning that I ascribe to that? What does it say about me as a person? Why does it make me uncomfortable? What do I mean? It then ensues like, oh, it means I'm weak. And if I'm weak, then I'm what? So it's that kind of self-inquiry of, why do I feel this compulsion to jump to do something about something to alleviate the discomfort? Because it's saying something about me that I couldn't possibly feel is right about me. And this is what's so interesting about, this letting go, is that unless what you're facing is actual death, you're just facing ego death. And so that's always a good thing for us. A bad day for the ego is a good day for the soul. And so these situations that are charging us, and we all have them, they are ultimately just helping us get more free. But we have to go through this doorway of feeling temporary discomfort that it's only the ego saying to you, I'm about to die, so I'm clutching on for dear life, and telling you can't possibly sit through this tiny little segue of discomfort that you're going to feel when you release the grip that I have on you.
Right. And so for me, I'm actually the one that's uncomfortable being with people when they're going through something hard. So that's not even really for me about the fixing. It's about me dealing with the fact that I'm just uncomfortable being around people that are going through hard things, and that I can't fix it. And what you said about you can't solve the problem from the level of consciousness that it comes from. To me, it's right now, what else can I bring to my relationships that is not me fixing things for people? Because I know that there's a charge there for me. And so what else do I bring to the table that isn't that? And exploring that, it's almost kind of going around it a little bit.
Yeah. It's amazing because ultimately the difference when you really change your life is owning the part of you that your ego needs, right? So there's such a big difference when we're talking about spiritual growth. There's a massive difference between saying, I just care about people and I want to save them, versus I am uncomfortable when I can't save. There's a massive difference between saying, I'm a people pleaser, poor me, versus saying, I need to be seen in a certain way by certain people. And by the way, we all have flavors of this exact same thing. It's like always about needing to be seen in a certain way, but not necessarily by other people, but the way that we think that makes us look to ourselves. Even if you're someone who doesn't care about what other people think, it's like you need to use your interactions into life to reaffirm who you tell yourself you are or need to be. And I think what the second part you're saying is really interesting, because it's the discomfort of not knowing what we would do if we didn't have that as our persona, as our addiction, as our preoccupation of time. And we think that we have to know what else it looks like in order to make the jump. But the sad truth is that it's an invitation for life to fill it with something that we don't know yet. And that is scary, and that is hard, and that is jumping off a cliff, right? That is a precipice that we don't know if we're going to get caught. And so it's almost like we're in this state sometimes of better the devil we know than the devil we don't, because we would rather stay in the old patterns of, well, I know at least I can use my time up by being a fixer or a people pleaser or a God knows whatever, right? Rather than, can I just sit in the empty space? Because also empty space and quiet and not needing things and not being sure does also feel like a kind of death, or not feeling as alive. There's a lot of charge, a lot of aliveness that being busy, being stressed gives us. And so that's another thing that we're being forced to let go of with right now, is that if you could get everything you want, and there would be peace and there would be happiness and there would be all these other things, are you willing to give up that lesser fuel of feeling alive that we've all been running on for millennia. And it's scary because we don't actually know how else it could work. So we literally are going through a system upgrade where it's just hard to be in the frontier, which everyone listening is right now, by virtue of them having a consciousness that is, wanting to explore these ideas. If this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is saying to you, you could get everything you want out of nowhere, what is scary about that? Where are you actually resisting that? And that is where we resist. Oh, but I wouldn't know what to be stressed about all the time. And then what would I do with my time? What would I worry about? And in a way, worry is comfort. Worry is a brain pathway that we've become so used to. So it has become part of our geolocator of how we feel like us on this planet. And so it really is like you lose a part of your identity. And I want to just validate that is a difficult thing to do for every human being at every level. No matter how many times you've changed your life, no matter how many times you've, made incredible leaps of consciousness at any stage, getting rid of identity is so difficult, because how else do you even know you're here and you're alive? Like, how else do you give animation to this form? And so I think it's also really important to go at a pace that you feel comfortable with. This is not a time to rip off band-aids if it's going to make you feel less grounded. It's okay to rip off band-aids if you feel like this is a band-aid I can rip off and I feel competent enough. But if you're going to rob yourself of a feeling of competency in a time when things are so unstable, just because the ego is like, make more changes, then that means your life is going to happen more quickly. That's not the right way to do it. We've got to do this in a grounded, bringing our whole sides along the way. Like, okay, we're only going to go as far as the scared part wants to go today. We're only going to go as far as the activated, the fearful, the whatever. Like, everyone's coming along and everyone's holding hands. So the slowest one is the pace we're all going to go for. We're all going to slow down for the slowest one. And I also feel that it's so important to just know when you can push the accelerator and know when you can push the brakes. And also know what things, okay, if you can have anything you want, okay, is it from ego? Do you want 10 houses? Because that's probably a want that you can try on for size. So also refining, okay, if this is a time when we can have everything we want, what do we actually want? And imagine that we have this buffet of things that we might want, right? Success looks like this, 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 and this. We have to remember it's a buffet. It's not a package. So what I mean by that is you can pick, okay, I want the...
or like a set menu. It's not a tasting menu. You don't get to have a choice.
Yeah. So it's about saying, you know what? I want to be... I don't know, someone says they want to be famous, but then they also don't want to have to, speak a lot. That's an option. It just hasn't been grooved before. So everyone says, well, you have to speak a lot if you want to be famous. But what about if both of those things ring true for you? It's only your neural architecture that says they have to come together. So when you detach those, you get to only pick one and then opt out of the other. So it's the same with our wants. We can go through our internal architecture and say, why do I think those two things have to come together? Why do I think those two things have to be tied? And the same with your personal lives. Like, why do I think that fixing everyone's problems is going to, be the only thing I can do to be valuable?
Because I think that I like seeing myself that way. And is that really how I want to see myself? Is there actually a more admirable way I could, like a way I could be existing that I would admire even more?
And admiring yourself is so, so important. Becoming your real self, becoming a person you're proud of being, that ultimately is what animates your the cogs of your life, right? The outside, the resources, the physical world, that's the whole difference between having a life that looks great on paper as a person you are happy being versus a person you're not happy being. But I think that's also what's so amazing about this time, is that the outside sort of curriculum, the cosmos sort of stage we're in, is also so exactly what everyone is going through on the inside. So when we do one on the outside, it works on the inside works on the outside. Everyone is on the same test. It just, our tests look different. We have got, chose different flavors of the same ice cream brand. But I think that's what's so reassuring as well to understand, is that, and we say this a lot, let there be nothing about me that I can't say to me and not be okay with. Because when you air your stuff, maybe I don't fix everyone in my personal life, but I do something else with them that's neither better or worse. How freeing to know there are opportunities where I can become more me. And that's that softness that we want to be approaching all this ego death and letting go and change and all this stuff with, is like, this is all a gift on the other side of this. And unless I'm dying, it's just my ego that's dying. And how beautiful to live without that, and then actually give myself a chance of discovering what else could lie for me in this life. That if I want it to be extraordinary, I can't look to the past or the present or the status quo to even give me clues on that. I can't even default to my brain, because my brain is working off past evidence. So we are jumping into the abyss, but you can choose not to, and you can choose to, and it's just a choice. There's no better or worse.
I was going to say earlier that as you were talking, I was thinking about the Accepting Your Humanness audio in the How to Grow audio series. If you scroll down where you are right now, you'll see it in How to Grow. Because I think if you're looking for what to let go of, what you're could be letting go of, it helps to put yourself in the state of actually accepting your humanness, to see maybe there's something that you're not even willing to see right now that you could be letting go of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, what you need to let go of will be shown to you as you go about your day. You don't necessarily need to know exactly your thing now, but maybe in a couple of hours, something will charge you. And then you'll have the opportunity, and you'll see it as like, oh, this is my opening to do some self-inquiry about why this and why that. And, you can notice a story that your ego says to you all the time. Well, it's because people just don't get this, and this, and it's usually, it gets very kind of hoity-toity about things. It gets very self-justifiable and very right, and starts to kind of spit facts. And then that's how you'll know when the universe wants you to work on this. It's not that we need to be setting aside 8 hours of our day, journaling it out. It's just like, oh, it's going to get sent to you. You can't control when. Just about going about your life. And it's not about having 25 of them making you better than just getting one. It's about how well you meet the one. And so even if you only get one thing, if you clean it so well, you've probably changed your life better than if you were getting tested 25 times a day and not really rising to meet the opportunity for what it is. So the main thing that I want to say is that let's just sort of recap. This is a really positive time, and it is good, obviously, to sometimes give yourself moments of wallowing, feeling sorry for yourself, feeling your feelings, feeling like it's unfair. All of that, you want to give it airtime, but you also don't want to turn it into a narrative of it's so hard, it's so hard, it's so hard. And of course there are aspects of it that are, but at the same time to kind of rise above and see life from a higher lens of, we are entering into a different time. This is the preparation. This is a training ground for us to become more free and to learn to literally live in a different way and to approach life and ourselves in a different way. And we've all gone through so many stripping downs that now we get to decide, wow, once there's been a clearing, what magic can be born through this portal, because there isn't so much clutter and mess in the way. And so if you can just kind of put your heart on your hand and say, life has put me through the ringer, and, to a degree I've let it, and my life is facing some empty space right now, but this is a really promising ground. And if I can take every challenging opportunity as an opportunity to look inside, be a little bit of a scientist and try to figure out why I'm so afraid of that, or why I think about this every day, or why I always have this default negative emotion. Like, why am I anxious? Why am I helpless? Why do I always go to, see, I told you that this and this, all of those things that just kind of reoccur. If we can really start to honor our pain points as the doors through which we have to look that help us become free, and then to see that this is happening now because of the quantum jumps that are available when you even do like the smallest amount of inner work, because time, space, and motion is speeding up, because the gaps between those things are shortening, the effects of us changing and the outcomes can happen so much quicker and stronger and faster than they ever have before. So we will really see the difference and the transparency of the overlay between what we do inside and what we do on the outside, and also vice versa. And so it's a really promising time, but we need people to see it as a promising time rather than let ourselves get bogged down in the worry and the fear and the it's not all doom and gloom. And life is a cycle. It doesn't work that way. We go through periods of contraction and stripping down so that we can have something new. Just like financial markets, there's a certain cleansing that they go through, and then economies come back even stronger to a level that they didn't operate before there was the stripping down. So it's the same thing now. Like, our world has gotten stripped down because now when it goes up, it's going to go up to higher up than it was before. And so hold that consciousness with everything you do. It's because we are getting this new fresh soil for things to be grown on. One of the most common questions that we receive is about compatibility with your partner according to Human Design. And so this episode of the New Paradigm series is going to cover that, because it's so amazing how right now everyone is going through this fast track of life. And we don't even have a choice. Life is putting us on this fast track. And there is this massive resurgence I'm seeing of people breaking up out of nowhere, all of a sudden feeling ready to break up out of nowhere, or